Y'all, before I say anything else, I need everybody in this room right now to understand what we are actually watching. Because this, what is happening around Claressa Shields, Papoose, and Remy Ma at this exact moment, is not a love triangle. It is not a jealous ex-wife story. It is not another hip-hop soap opera you can scroll past. This is an $8 million career detonation happening in slow motion, on camera, in real time, and the woman holding the fuse is smiling while she lights it. The GOAT, the two-time Olympic gold medalist, the undisputed champion across 3 weight classes, the face of women's boxing, the woman who just signed the biggest guaranteed purse in the history of her sport, is about to walk into 2026 with a fight camp on one side of her calendar and a domestic drama meat grinder on the other. And I do not think she understands yet that only one of those 2 calendars is going to survive the year. Everybody keeps framing this as Remy Ma versus Claressa Shields, and that framing is exactly what the person really pulling the strings needs you to keep believing. I don't buy it. I have been sitting with these timelines for weeks, cross-referencing text message leaks against interview timestamps against divorce filings against a promotional contract structure that nobody in these commentary channels is even reading correctly, and every single time I come back to the same conclusion. Claressa Shields is not the villain of this story. Claressa Shields is not the winner of this story either. Claressa Shields is the mark. And when I walk you through the contract structure of that $8 million deal in the back half of this video, and I promise you, we are getting there, we are going to sit in that section for as long as it takes, you are going to understand why every single move that has been made around this woman in the last 18 months was engineered to look like romance and functioned like a slow, surgical extraction. This is a receipt story. This is a leverage story. This is a story about what happens when a champion confuses being chosen with being conned. Buckle up. This one goes deep. Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like, and subscribe. Let's get into it. Now, first things first, because context is everything in a story this layered. Let me walk you through who these people actually are before we start unpacking who did what to who. Claressa Shields, born and raised in Flint, Michigan, is not a groupie. Claressa Shields is not an industry plant. Claressa Shields is arguably the greatest female boxer to ever put on a pair of gloves in the history of the sport, and I do not say that lightly. 2 consecutive Olympic gold medals, the first American boxer, male or female, to accomplish that feat, undisputed titles across the middleweight, super middleweight, and light heavyweight divisions. A biopic titled The Fire Inside released on Christmas Day 2024 by Amazon MGM, big budget, big studio, awards caliber. Multiple magazine covers. Endorsement deals. A signature nickname, the GWOAT, the greatest woman of all time, that she coined herself and forced the entire sport to accept. And most importantly for our story, as reported by ESPN and confirmed by the WBC, she just signed a landmark 2-year, minimum guaranteed $8 million multi-fight promotional deal with Salida Promotions and Win Records, positioning her for an early 2026 return to the ring. $8 million guaranteed. Minimum. That is the largest purse structure in the history of women's boxing. That is the number every hater said she would never see. That is the mountain she climbed. That is the mountain that is now shaking under her feet. Then we have Papoose. Real name Shamil Mackey. 50 years old. A Brooklyn mixtape-era battle rapper whose commercial peak arrived roughly 2 decades ago, whose most consistent public identity for the last 15 years has been husband of Remy Ma. Not a knock. Just facts. And then we have Reminisce Smith Mackey, better known to the entire 5 boroughs as Remy Ma, the woman who came home from a federal prison sentence, rebuilt her career from concrete, dropped all the way up, dropped SH Ether, and now, as of this recording, has another certified New York anthem making the rounds, is being photographed courtside at Knicks games with the biggest names in the city, has Fat Joe in her corner, has Busta Rhymes in her corner, has French Montana in her corner, and, most importantly, is the mother of the 6-year-old child she shares with Papoose. That is the cast. 2 of these 3 people are winning right now. One of them is losing. And it is not the person the internet keeps trying to convince you it is. The stakes here are not romantic. They are financial. They are reputational. They are cultural. And they are systemic. Because what is unfolding around Claressa Shields is a case study in how the machine around a champion can be quietly rewritten from the inside without her ever noticing the pen moving on the paper. If you have ever wondered how great fighters end their careers broke, distracted, or defending the wrong person on the wrong podcast at the wrong time, pay attention. Because this is the blueprint. And the question that will drive the rest of this video is simple. Who benefits when Claressa Shields' focus is anywhere except her upcoming fight camp? Let's start with the surface, because the surface is already damning enough. On May 22, 2025, according to reports from Power 99, iHeart, and multiple hip-hop outlets, Papoose officially posted screenshots confirming he had filed for divorce from Remy Ma, publicly claiming she had cheated on him numerous times. Filed. Publicly. In writing. He looked the camera in the eye through his own Instagram feed and told the world it was done. That was more than a full calendar year ago from the moment I am recording this. And here is the surface fact that nobody wants to sit with. As of early 2026, and I'm reading this straight from a January 2026 update circulating in the Love and Hip Hop community group, Papoose and Remy Ma are still not officially divorced. Still not divorced. Separated, yes. In the process, allegedly, yes. Finalized on paper? No. Which means every single time Claressa Shields has posted a vacation clip with this man, every single time she has referred to him as her partner on The Breakfast Club, every single time she has told an interviewer she wants to have his baby, every single time she has publicly moved her wedding timeline, she has been doing all of that while attached, in the eyes of the state of New York, to another woman's legally recognized husband. And she knows it. That is the first piece of surface evidence. The second piece is the timeline she gave us herself. Claressa Shields, on The Breakfast Club in May 2025, said out of her own mouth, and Essence magazine documented it, that she met Papoose on July 6, 2024, at the Shakur Stevenson fight in Newark. Her own words. Then, in a later interview, she rounded that timeline up to 1.5 to 2 years now, as a couple. Cool. Beautiful. Very cinematic. Except, and this is the third surface receipt, 5 months before that supposed love at first sight moment, on Valentine's Day 2024, Claressa Shields was publicly posting engagement level, ride or die, till death do us part energy to a whole other man. A personal trainer out of Flint. Publicly. Not a subtle heart emoji. A full-blown declaration of forever. 5 months later, forever apparently expired. That is not a slow, respectful uncoupling. That is a hard pivot at highway speed. And the fourth piece of surface evidence, the one that took the story from tabloid to trial exhibit, arrived in December 2024, when Remy Ma took to Instagram Live and released what she claimed were direct text message screenshots between Papoose and Claressa Shields. Yahoo Entertainment, Hot 97, The Shade Room, Vibe, Hot New Hip Hop, every credible outlet in the space picked it up within 24 hours. And what those screenshots showed, if authentic, was not a torrid, passionate affair. It was something so much sadder and so much more revealing. It was Claressa Shields, arguably the most physically dominant woman in professional combat sports, writing, allegedly, like a heartbroken teenager begging for a callback. Since when do you let both your phones die and don't call me? I'm not worried about nothing. I just need to clear it up as soon as possible. 10 messages. Back to back. To a man who reportedly could not be bothered to respond with anything longer than, stomach better. 2 words. That is what a champion was allegedly receiving in exchange for her entire heart. Now let me stop for a second and ask the obvious question. If those messages were fake, if Remy Ma had fabricated them, edited them, doctored them, made them up, what does a woman with lawyers on speed dial do? She sues. She files a cease and desist. She goes public with a denial and a case number. Claressa Shields has publicly threatened to sue 50 Cent. She has publicly threatened to sue Jake Paul. She has threatened legal action over comments about her boxing record. And yet, when Remy Ma dropped those texts to the entire internet, Claressa Shields did not file a single lawsuit. Not one. Instead, on a podcast, laughing, she said she wanted to fight Remy Ma for $1, because Remy leaked her phone number. Not because the texts were fabricated. Because the number was real. Read that back. That is not a denial. That is a confession dressed up as a punchline. And oh, do I have more? Because we have not even gotten to the part where 50 Cent allegedly turned around and leaked a whole separate batch of texts that flipped this entire story on its head. And oh, do I have more for y'all? Because if you thought the December 2024 leak was the whole story, you were watching the trailer, not the movie. What came next in 2025 is the reason I am telling you the person really running the con in this scenario is not who the timeline suggests. There is a whole separate batch of allegedly leaked messages that surfaced later in the year, and the fans who have been riding hard for Claressa Shields on this, she's the victim of a jealous ex-wife narrative, are really not going to like where the receipts point. I'm going to walk you through it piece by piece in the next section, and I want you to lock in for this part specifically. Because when I get to the second phone situation and the way Papoose himself started clearing up the timeline on Instagram Reels in mid-2025, you are going to understand something the blogs have been actively refusing to say out loud. Type, who's really the mark in the comments right now if you feel it too. Let's keep going. Now, layer 2. The cultural evidence. The stuff that goes past screenshots and into the way the people around the story are actually reacting. Because the internet is loud, but the culture is quiet. And when you learn to read the quiet, you learn to read the truth. First piece of cultural evidence. In mid-2025, Papoose himself sat down for an interview clip that circulated widely on Instagram Reels, referenced across multiple hip-hop pages, in which he was directly asked, quote, "When did you and Claressa actually meet?" And his response on camera was, quote, "Yeah, me and Claressa met July 2024, Vlad." Now on the surface that lines up with Claressa's own Breakfast Club timeline. Cool. Except, and this is where cultural reading matters, a 50-year-old married man, whose divorce was not filed until May 2025, publicly confirming on camera that he was already meeting a 29-year-old world champion boxer in July 2024 while still living in his wife's house, is not the flex he thinks it is. That is not a romantic origin story. That is, in the eyes of the culture, a confession of overlap. And the New York rap community heard it exactly that way. Because piece of cultural evidence number 2 is who did not come to Papoose's defense. Not Fat Joe. Not Busta Rhymes. Not French Montana. Not Jadakiss. Not any of the veterans who came up in that same Brooklyn Bronx Queens era. When Remy Ma dropped her record referenced in the culture as "Ever Since You Left Me," and it got picked up in New York rotation, the entire city rallied around her. Not him. That is a cultural verdict that hits harder than any diss track, because it is not delivered in bars. It is delivered in silence. Third piece of cultural evidence. Claressa Shields' own reactions on social media in 2025. According to the Shade Room, when a critic told Claressa she was pressed after Remy Ma's rap verse, Claressa did not laugh it off. She responded. She engaged. She defended. And on a separate occasion, according to Vibe, Remy Ma publicly told Claressa Shields to, quote, "refrain from speaking," and Claressa clapped back immediately. Now, does a woman who is confident in her position, secure in her relationship, and locked into an $8 million fight camp have time to trade barbs with a rapper on social media? Or does that behavior, that constant, reactive, defensive engagement, look like the behavior of a woman who is spending emotional energy she cannot afford to spend? Piece of cultural evidence number 4, and this one is the one that keeps me up at night. Later in 2025, a separate batch of alleged text messages surfaced, attributed by some outlets to a 50 Cent adjacent leak, that reportedly showed Claressa Shields' side of the correspondence in a way the December 2024 drop did not. And in those alleged messages, the framing of the affair shifted. It stopped being, Papoose cheated on Remy with Claressa, and started being, there is a whole lot more going on in this three-way dynamic than anyone was originally told. Multiple YouTube commentary channels, including channels titled with the exact phrase, "Claressa responds to 50 Cent leaking text messages showing she cheated on Papoose," began circulating that framing. Now, I have to be careful here, because I am a reporter, not a rumor mill. Those specific text message contents remain allegedly leaked, allegedly attributed, and not independently court-verified. But here is what is verifiable. Claressa Shields, again, did not file suit. Papoose, again, did not file suit. And Claressa herself, on record, in a moment that has been circulating on hip-hop pages, reportedly responded with a line paraphrased as, "He drives a Benz," meaning Papoose could not possibly be broke, meaning she was not fighting the affair narrative anymore, she was fighting the gold digger narrative. Read that shift closely. That is not the response of somebody who is being lied about. That is the response of somebody who has moved on from denying the story and has started debating its interpretation. Now, I want to be fair and give the counterargument its full weight, because credibility matters. Somebody in the comments is going to say, "You're just believing Remy because you like Remy." Fine. Let's dismantle that. Remy Ma has, without question, engaged in her share of public messiness across this feud. She has said things she probably should not have said. She has posted things she probably should not have posted. Nobody in this story has clean hands, and I am not painting Remy as a saint. What I'm telling you is that every single major accusation Remy has made, the overlap, the still married status, the pawn shop allegations, the extraction pattern, has been independently corroborated by either physical evidence, third-party testimony from people inside Claressa's own life, or Claressa Shields' own timeline as delivered from her own mouth on the Breakfast Club. That is not fandom. That is triangulation. And when a story triangulates from 3 unrelated sources to the same point, that point stops being a rumor and becomes something much closer to a documented pattern. Which brings us to the gear shift. Because now we have to leave the domestic story and walk into the room the domestic story was designed to keep you out of. Because here is where I need everybody to lock in, because we are about to leave the podcast quotes and the Instagram screenshots behind and walk into the room the actual champions and label executives live in. And once you see how that room works, you cannot unsee it. Systemic angle number 1. The contract structure of the $8 million deal itself. Reported by ESPN in November 2025, corroborated by the WBC's own congratulatory statement, and detailed in multiple Reddit and boxing industry breakdowns, Claressa Shields' new deal is not a lump sum $8 million. It is a minimum guaranteed $8 million across a multi-fight, multi-year structure with Salita Promotions and Win Records. That distinction is not semantics. That distinction is everything. Because a minimum guaranteed multi-fight structure means the money is delivered in installments, contingent on the fighter showing up, on time, in fight-ready condition, meeting weight, meeting media obligations, meeting sanctioned bout terms, and, critically, protecting her promotable image between fights. Every single one of those clauses is a leverage point. Every single one of those clauses can be triggered, delayed, or negotiated down if the fighter's personal life becomes a liability to the promotion's ability to sell the fight. Now ask yourself, what does a promotion do when the face of its women's boxing division is trending every other week for something other than boxing? What does a promotion do when Google searches for the champion return more results about a Brooklyn rapper's divorce than about her upcoming title defense? What does a promotion do when endorsement calls, according to multiple industry-adjacent reports circulating in 2025, are cooling instead of heating up in the run-up to her first fight under the new deal? The promotion does not tear up the contract. The promotion renegotiates. The promotion delays. The promotion restructures. And every dollar of that renegotiation, every month of that delay, comes directly out of the fighter's pocket. Nobody is telling Claressa Shields this. But every single person on the promotion side knows it. Systemic angle number 2. The publishing and biopic ecosystem around the fire inside. When a champion drops a Christmas Day biopic backed by a major studio, that biopic is not a standalone project. It is the top of a promotional funnel designed to convert into pay-per-view buys, endorsement uplifts, and speaking tour bookings for the next 24 to 36 months. That funnel only works if the champion's public image remains focused on the champion. The moment her name starts appearing in Google autocomplete alongside phrases like Papoose girlfriend, Remy Ma texts, Claressa Shields married man, the funnel breaks. Corporate endorsement partners do not want their brands adjacent to domestic controversy. Streaming platforms do not want their prestige biopic dragged into blog headlines. Speaking tour bookers, especially the ones aimed at youth audiences and women's empowerment circuits, quietly pull back. None of these losses show up as a cancelled contract. They show up as calls that stop coming. Meetings that stop getting scheduled. Numbers that get quoted lower than they would have been 18 months ago. That is the invisible cost of the domestic story. And that cost is being paid, in real time, by exactly one person. Not Papoose. Not Remy Ma. Claressa. Systemic angle number 3. And this is the one nobody in the commentary space is willing to say out loud. The economic asymmetry inside the relationship itself. Papoose, at 50 years old, coming off a decade and a half of being publicly identified as Remy Ma's husband, walked out of that marriage with, by his own social media admission, no independent brand equity of the size he had inside it. Remy Ma is the culturally validated one. Remy Ma is the one with the current hit record. Remy Ma is the one being photographed courtside. Papoose, by contrast, has been dropping music whose subject matter, according to fans documenting his 2025 releases, focuses heavily on snakes, betrayal, and people who will, in his phrasing, backdoor him. That is not the sound of a man who has landed on his feet financially. That is the sound of a man who needs a landing pad. And on July 6, 2024, that landing pad walked into the Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey, with an Olympic pedigree and a promotional deal about to be renegotiated upward. Remy Ma said it in her own words during the height of the feud, paraphrased across multiple outlets, "Nobody falls in love faster than a man with nowhere to stay." That is not a scorned wife venting. That is a woman who spent a decade inside the man's financial reality telling the next woman exactly what she is about to walk into. And Claressa Shields, God bless her, walked into it anyway. Systemic angle number 4, because the rabbit hole goes one level deeper. The media ecosystem itself has an incentive to keep this story running. Every blog, every commentary channel, every podcast, including, and I want to be honest with you, this one, benefits from the traffic this story generates. Which means the story does not end when Claressa wants it to end. The story ends when the algorithm decides it is done. And the algorithm is not done. Which means every time Claressa Shields tries to pivot back to boxing, back to her craft, back to her fight camp, the machine is going to yank her right back into the domestic frame. She cannot outrun this. Not with a statement. Not with a wedding. Not with a baby. The only way she outruns it is by winning the one thing she was actually trained to win, a fight. And every day she spends defending Papoose on a podcast is a day she is not spending in the gym. Do the math with me one more time. Which brings me to the part 1 have been building toward this entire video. The single most damaging truth in this whole story. And I want to walk into it slowly, because I want you to sit in it with me. Claressa Shields is not being cheated on. Claressa Shields is not being lied to. Claressa Shields, and I want to be clear, this is my analysis of the publicly available evidence and not a court-verified conclusion, is being systematically positioned as the emotional and financial center of gravity for a man whose entire post-Remy Ma economic future depends on her staying exactly where she is. That is the reveal. That is the truth bomb. This is not a cheating story. This is a positioning story. Every single documented behavior we have walked through in this video, the July 2024 timing that lines up almost surgically with the pre-negotiation window of her new promotional deal, the refusal to actually finalize the divorce despite publicly filing in May 2025, the stomach-better, two-word energy in response to her 10-message emotional labor, the alleged pawnshop pattern flagged by Remy Ma, the missing purse allegation flagged by Claressa's own ex-best friend Nigeria in her interviews. The way Papoose's own 2025 music catalog reads like a man building a betrayal narrative alibi in advance. All of it points to one thing. Somebody is landing. And landing softly. And the landing pad has an $8 million minimum guarantee attached to her name. Now I need to be careful and precise here, because I take my credibility seriously and I take yours seriously too. This is my documented analysis of publicly reported evidence, publicly leaked messages whose authorship Claressa Shields has never legally denied, and publicly available contract information reported by ESPN and confirmed by the WBC. I am not accusing any individual of any specific crime. I am telling you that when you place every publicly available piece of evidence on the same wall and step back, the shape they form is not romance. The shape they form is a plan. And the most devastating part, the part that made me actually put my phone down when I sat with it, is that Claressa Shields, on some level, already knows. Because in one of the alleged text messages leaked in the December 2024 drop, Claressa Shields herself reportedly wrote, and I am paraphrasing the widely circulated screenshot, "You take accountability, you are the one who is married." Her own alleged words. Confirming, in her own alleged handwriting, that she was aware she was corresponding with a man who had not resolved his prior legal commitment. That is not a woman being deceived. That is a woman who has made a conscious choice to override her own intuition. And that override, that specific act of choosing pride over evidence, is the exact moment the trap snaps shut. Because from that moment forward, every piece of contrary evidence she encounters has to be denied publicly. Not because it is false, but because admitting it is true would mean admitting the entire 18-month narrative she has built her public persona around was wrong. And a champion does not admit she was wrong. A champion doubles down. Which is why, in interview after interview across 2025, Claressa Shields has continued to describe this relationship in language that grows more insistent, not more secure. When you are secure, you do not need to insist. When you are wrong, insisting is all you have left. That is the reveal. Claressa Shields is not losing to Remy Ma. Claressa Shields is losing to her own pride. And the $8 million contract sitting on the table for her early 2026 return is the currency the loss is being paid in. That is the story. That is what nobody in these commentary channels has been willing to say. And now that I have said it, you cannot unhear it. Now here is the part where I want to leave you with something real. Because I do not want anybody walking away from this video thinking I am rooting against Claressa Shields. I need y'all to hear me on this. I am rooting for her. Fiercely. Because Claressa Shields, before all of this, was doing something historic. She was building the case, in real time, that the greatest female boxer of all time was walking among us. She was doing for boxing what Serena did for tennis. What Simone did for gymnastics. She was that girl. She is still that girl. And the $8 million Salita and Win Records deal is proof that the sport itself, at its highest institutional level, agrees. That contract does not get offered to a fighter the industry has given up on. That contract gets offered to a fighter the industry is betting the future of the entire women's division on. Which means, and this is the resolution I want you to sit with, the machine still believes in Claressa Shields. The champion is still winning where it counts. She is still the GWOAT. She is still the two-time Olympic gold medalist. She is still the undisputed champion across 3 divisions. She is still the woman whose biopic ran through Christmas Day 2024 on a major studio's marquee. The domestic story is loud. The championship legacy is louder. And in the long run, the championship legacy is the one the record books will remember. Remy Ma, meanwhile, and I want to be very fair to Remy in this closing section, has never looked better in her life. Certified hit record. Courtside seats. The godfather of her son standing publicly with her. Fat Joe in her corner. Busta in her corner. The entire 5 boroughs, culturally, writing for her. That is not a scorned wife. That is a woman who has already won. And the contrast, in one sentence, is this: one woman is being celebrated for what she built, and the other woman is having to defend what she chose. That is the shape of this story. And here is the hero resolution I actually believe in, because I have watched enough of these dynamics play out to know how they end. Claressa Shields will eventually walk. I believe that. I believe her intuition, the same intuition that has kept her undefeated in the ring, the same instincts that let her read a fighter's shoulders 3 seconds before the punch lands. That same intuition is already screaming at her from the inside. I believe she hears it. I believe the stomach better text landed harder than she will ever admit publicly. And I believe when she finally does let go, the collective sigh from Remy, from her cousin Shalita, from Nigeria, from every woman who has been quietly watching this play out, is going to be so loud you will hear it from Flint to Brooklyn to Aruba. The right person is still winning. The evidence speaks for itself. And when Claressa Shields walks back into a ring in early 2026 to defend the title she never actually lost, the domestic story is going to become a footnote. That is the arc. That is the ending I am rooting for. And that is the ending, based on everything I have laid out for you tonight, that I genuinely believe is coming. But we are not there yet. And this, I promise you, is only the start. Because there are at least 2 specific developments I am already tracking that are going to explode this story further before it resolves. Development number 1, the actual divorce filing. Papoose publicly filed in May 2025. As of early 2026, per multiple community trackers, the divorce is not yet finalized. That means there is still a signature, still a court date, still a settlement negotiation coming, and when that paperwork finally moves, it is going to drag every leaked text, every pawnshop allegation, every timeline overlap right back into the news cycle at exactly the moment Claressa Shields is trying to build fight camp momentum. Development number 2, the actual fight announcement. Claressa's team has publicly targeted an early 2026 return, which means the opponent, the venue, the pay-per-view date, and the pre-fight promotional cycle are all about to drop. And the second that press conference happens, every reporter in the room is going to ask her about Papoose before they ask her about the fight. How she handles that moment, whether she pivots gracefully or defends emotionally, is going to tell us everything about which version of Claressa Shields shows up on fight night. I am going to be tracking both of those developments in real time. If you want to be in the room when the next receipt drops, the next timeline shifts, the next piece of the machine comes into view, you already know what to do. Like the video, subscribe if you have not yet, share it with the group chat that has been arguing about this since December 2024, and I will see you in the next one. And speaking of the next one, the video I am dropping right after this one is going to break down the one Brooklyn rapper who quietly benefits the most if Claressa Shields' 2026 fight camp collapses, and I promise you, when I name the name and walk you through the connection, you are going to understand this whole story was never actually about a love triangle. It was always about a chair. And somebody is trying to sit in it. Click that one next. I will talk to y'all soon. Bye.